2023 was a really hit or miss year for horror. You could probably say that about most years, but it just didn't quite do for me what 2022 did. I won't say it was all bad though, because there were a few standouts for me. However, today I wanted to talk about the top rated horror movies of 2023. I put together a top 5 list. Before we get to that, let me talk about how I assembled it. It took a lot of Googling. I went through review sites, I looked at what critics thought, they assembled lists of like the top 100 movies of 2023. I also went onto sites like Reddit, and I looked at what everybody's favorite horror movies were on like r/horror or something like that. I didn't only go off of that though. None of this is really my opinion on how I assembled these, but I did look at movies, I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch that again, or I don't want 2 Spanish movies in the list. Did assemble the list, it's my list in that instance, but maybe 2 of these movies would make the cut for my top 5 movies of the year. I don't even know. Maybe only one of them would be top 5. I don't know though. I didn't watch too many horror films this year. A lot of the movies or time I had watching movies was spent watching movies for YouTube. Enough of that. Let's get into the video. I'm going to be ranking these from worst to best, you know, the tried and true method. I thought about doing it the other way around, but I didn't quite like the way the script looked that way. I have to mention at the beginning of this that I don't dislike any of the movies I'm going to be talking about today. They're all okay in their own right. I mean, they made people's top 10 lists. All the movies I selected were always put in at least the top 5 for everybody. Not everybody. And a lot of people had all these movies, or most of these movies, in their top 3 horror movies of the year. I did have a lot of trouble selecting the 5th movie I'd talk about, which I'll bring up when we get to it. Let's go ahead and add a spoiler warning here also. I'm going to be talking about the story, probably heavily summarizing most of them, but I will spoil the entire thing of all 5 of these films. So I'll put timestamps in the description that tell you what movie I'm talking about. So if there's a movie you want to watch and I'm going to be bringing it up, you can skip past it. So starting off with the 5th and worst movie, not a bad movie, Megan, or M3GAN. This movie is a bit interesting for this list because it's more of a horror comedy than it is just a straight horror film, but horror comedies in their own right are horror films. I mean, it's in the genre title, horror comedy. Anyway, Megan's a movie I never really planned on watching. It just didn't do it for me. Not only did the trailer just seem kind of stupid, but I saw James Wan produce the film. Now let's get into James Wan. James Wan has a couple really good horror films. I think he directed the very first Saw movie, which in its own right is the best Saw film. It's a good movie on its own. But he also directed the original Conjuring series. No matter how stupid that has gotten since then, the original The Conjuring's not a bad movie. I don't like most of what James Wan puts out today, so every movie I see with James Wan in it, because his name's so big, is bad until proven good. This movie did pretty well in the box office. It was a critical success. The ratings are not bad by any means. Let's give it a go. Megan starts with a Furby-like commercial for a toy. The only thing I can base off of is Furby. If you're as old as me or older, they came out in like 1998. There's these little toys. We then head to a family who's in a car driving to some sort of vacation in the snow. There's very inclement weather. Needless to say, the family ends up dying on the side of the road to like a snow plow. The parents are both deceased, and the daughter manages to survive. Just as soon as the transition happened into the deadly car crash, we're turned to new characters. They're all working at the toy company that made this Furby toy. Here we meet our main character of the story, Gemma. Gemma is a toy designer and girl boss who doesn't need no man or family. She's just fine doing her job and climbing up the ranks as a toy designer. Nothing wrong with Gemma. She's a fine character, I guess. None of the characters are strong in this movie. Gemma has been working on a toy on the company's dime, sort of behind everyone's back. In this scene, the boss walks in and discovers, oh, what the hell are you guys working on? This AI robot toy? This isn't approved by me. He gives them a deadline. He's like, okay, since you guys truly believe in this, I want you to put this at my desk within a week or 2, and we're gonna see if it works out. If it doesn't, you guys are in trouble. The guy that plays as this boss, I don't know if it's because of his accent or what, but his acting feels very acty.
Jem, what in the name of ever-loving Christ is this?
David, if you just give me a minute to explain.
Is this why you moved your lab down here, Gemma? So you can keep secrets from me?
No.
How much did you spend on this? Are you even aware of the tsunami that just swept in over this Furzy spot?
I'm sorry, what?
It's after this scene where the boss confronts them that we meet the little girl from the beginning of the film, the one in the car crash. As it turns out, Gemma is her aunt, so the mom that died, that's her sister. With her being an orphan and not having anywhere else to go, Gemma was the only person in the family that could take care of her, so she's dumped off on Gemma's plate? Well, Gemma has this big thing she has to introduce to her boss. We get some bland, emotionless acting from the two here. They try to show off how big of a girl boss Gemma is. She has no clue how to take care of a kid. By the way, that should be innate human nature to figure out how to take care of a child. That should just be something you pick up. This woman's in her 30s, very obviously. But, like, she's shown as this super inept character who can barely take care of herself. I could barely take care of myself. How can I take care of a child? That stupid. We then get several scenes of the team working on this new doll. Gemma declares that the name of it's going to be Megan. At some point, she finally shows the toy to her boss. Her boss ends up very impressed by this, and they're going to get ready to amp up into a launch mode for the toy. They're going to try to show it off to some investors. Maybe they're shareholders, I'm not sure.
It's nice to meet you, Katie. Ooh, I like that jacket. Where'd you get it?
This is unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
How did you do this? Okay, we need to get this in front of the board.
I was just gonna say.
I'm all in. But we're gonna be asking the board to invest in something that's not gonna see a profit for 3 years.
During this conversation, though, Gemma thinks it would be a good idea for the doll to spend time with her niece. Katie, that's the little girl's name, because when the AI doll interacts with a child, it works better, because it learns more. It's an AI machine learning model, so yeah. It's just a bunch of AI jargon, really. The movie goes on to show the experience that Gemma and Katie have with this doll. It's all pretty benign. After a while, Gemma even mentions the dystopian idea of the doll almost becoming a co-parent towards the child that it's in life. If only that would have stopped her from continuing this little experiment. Instead, the doll slowly acts out and continues to get more intelligent until it almost gets sadistic and creepy. This begins with Gemma's next door neighbor and that next door neighbor's dog. The dog's annoying and the woman doesn't help. There's a fence between their house, but it's not really a fence to keep a dog out of. The woman doesn't even keep it on a chain.
Oh my God. How many times do I have to tell you to keep your dog off my property? He wasn't on your property. This wouldn't have happened if you'd fixed the fence.
So now with Katie being bit, the doll hands out a bit of justice. At this point, the audience, us, we aren't really expected to feel like this doll is terrible either, because a dog that's willing to bite a child over something like this probably deserves to be put down. I'm sorry, animal lovers. That's a bad dog. The person that owns you is a shitty owner. There's a morally questionable scene where the doll ends up taking out the dog using the owner's voice. That's kind of silly. Don't worry though, the doll's actions get much more absurd from here. The next day, we see the next door neighbor out looking for her dog, holding treats, being like, come here boy, and of course the dog's dead, so it doesn't show up. Yes, though, one of the main conflicts of this film is a neighbor dispute over a dog. That is why this movie comes in 5th place. After a lot of boring Gemma and the doll and Katie are off to the investors. The investors are like, oh wow, this is so amazing. They just ate it all up. Needless to say, they're going into full launch mode, preparing to launch this doll globally. With such little testing, this all seems very silly, but let's live in a make-believe world where this Megan AI doll is able to just co-opt with children. That's a smart thing. Let's give this unknown machine brain technology of AI to children, the weakest people in our society, the most easily corruptible. Moving on, the movie continues with really the same beat. The doll keeps acting creepy. Gemma kind of notices this. The doll's sort of acting like a parent to Katie. It's really just creepy doll moments interspersed with wannabe Black Mirror future fear. Like, future fear is the best way I can describe this. Maybe like a creepy AI version of Chucky. This movie almost feels pointless, but at the same time, it's not a bad time to watch. I enjoyed it for what it was. The doll doesn't actually end up murdering a person until it decides to lure the neighbor who's looking for her dog into a shed, and it kills her. Then the next day, they go on this trip So Katie doesn't have a school. She just moved in with Gemma. And there's this new, like, weird kind of like California school where they go out into nature. They go out to this place. There's a bully out there. The doll is meant to be just sitting on a table. Meanwhile, Katie and Gemma get into an argument to bring the doll with them. This doll is supposed to be a top secret thing by this toy company, by the way, but Gemma takes it with them. It's sitting on a table. It hears this kid bullying Katie. Then it goes out into the woods and kills this little boy, rips his ear off, and then pushes him into traffic. He's killed by a car. Katie and the doll they become a team, and we see how big of a brat Katie is throughout this movie.
Careful, it's spiky.
Ow, stop, don't! Megan?
What the hell is that? You're just a stupid rubber doll with fake hair.
Ow! Let go!
You need to learn some manners, Brandon.
The next day, after this child murder, the police come over and they're like, hey, this is kind of weird. Your neighbor, maybe she killed the neighbor the next day. Yeah, I don't really remember the movie. The neighbor's like, hey, my dog went missing. So let's pretend like that whole the killing of the neighbor happened the next day. She's like, my dog also went missing and now this kid's dead. That's messed up. So the cops have an interest in this. Of course, Gemma's able to explain it away. Like, we have nothing to do with this. This is just a weird a coincidence. Gemma finally starts to get suspicion on the doll after this too. She's like, oh wait, the doll probably killed the neighbor and the dog and this kid. So she starts acting weird around the doll. Now we get to the ending of the movie, and this is a lot. The ending of this movie is a lot. The comedy of the film really amps up from here, but there's just too much and it's too ridiculous, and I need to summarize it for this video, so let's get through it. I don't want to bloat this video out. So we see a really manipulative commercial of Katie with the doll and her explaining how it helped her get over her parents' death or whatever. Just sounded like me being an asshole, but no, this movie does not do good with emotion. The emotions in this movie do not work. This is a very flat, dry movie. The humor is also very dry. We then see Gemma head off to the work. They're going to have this big world reveal, almost as if it's the world premiere on a live stream. The doll ends up breaking out of control of the people. They have like several shutoffs for this doll, but it still ends up breaking out.
Are you okay?
Yeah. What's that smell?
We see it killing both the people that Gemma's been working with on this doll, kills them, then heads out and kills the boss and this weirdo that's like his assistant in the elevator. There is a very funny scene of the doll kind of dancing towards the boss and them that I really liked. It's one of the funnier moments of this movie. After murdering people and magically manipulating the electronics around, it's able to get out of the building and into the boss's like Ferrari or whatever the kind of shitty sports car this is. And it's somehow able to hack the electronics of the sports car and drive back to Gemma's house. The doll meets Gemma and Katie back at the house. It's like, hey, Gemma, I'm going to be the new parent of Katie. Go f yourself. We have a Signs-esque moment where Gemma throws the water on the doll and it glitches out for a minute. This leads to the doll beating the f out of her, and we get a final showdown in their garage. Earlier in the movie, Gemma showed off this robot that she created in college in order to pass something. And while Gemma's getting beat up, Katie comes in with the gloves that control the robot, and she beats the shit out of the doll. It's a really long scene. There's a fake out where the doll ends up coming back to life too. There is a spooky ending at the end after you think the doll has been destroyed and Katie and Gemma are just fine and they're gonna be a happy family, happy ever after. Somehow the doll managed to put its intelligence into the Amazon Alexa in the house. It's dumb. This movie tries to put comedy and Black Mirror together and it doesn't really work. That was Megan though, a movie about a killer robot AI toy. It was just Chucky with AI, a modern Chucky, a creation of Gemma that got out of control. We've seen it 1,000 times. I think Ex Machina was a great movie about this. You keep the same ideas and try to make it into more of a horror movie and a comedy. I thought it was pretty funny though. This movie got several laughs out of me, but the acting and overall writing just didn't work. The characters seemed very flat. Every time Gemma had a problem or Katie had a problem, I really didn't give a fuck. When her parent, it's nothing. I don't care. I don't have any feelings towards these characters. So watching everybody get murdered or Gemma fighting this robot, I didn't care. It didn't bother me. If she would have died, I would have felt the same, no matter if she died or they defeated the AI. It didn't bother me. Maybe if Katie wasn't such a brat throughout the movie, I would have cared a little bit more. But this future fear just doesn't work on me. Overall, I guess I liked it. It wasn't bad. It was a fun watch. I think I'd give it a 5.5 out of 10, which isn't bad for a movie like this. If 5 is average, it's a little above average. It's still kind of an F though. I wouldn't ever watch it again, but it was okay. I had fun watching it, and I don't regret watching it. It was alright. There's another movie that a lot more of you liked that I'm going to shit on that you will hate me for soon, so let's continue. Our next movie was the hardest one for me to decide. It was the 5th movie on the list. I had 4 movies I was no matter what going to put on this list, and this movie was the last one. I had Skinamarink, which didn't look like a good movie to talk about on YouTube for like the style of videos I make, whatever that is. It had mixed reviews. Some people really hated it. Some people liked it. After that, I had Infinity Pool, which I tried to watch and I was less than thrilled about for the first 20 or 30 minutes. I noticed when I only wrote like 2 sentences of notes for this movie that it probably wouldn't be a good one to talk about. Then I had No One Will Save You, which is like an alien movie where there's very little dialogue. With very little dialogue, it would be much harder for me to talk about this movie unless I spent a lot of time on it, meaning I didn't really want to cover it. I still want to watch it. I might make a video about alien movies or UFO movies, horror movies. No One Will Save You was also not in very many top 10s. So this all left me with a horror movie that's not really a horror movie, but it was on a lot of people's lists for top 10 horror movies. This movie ended up being like 2, 3, or 4, or 5 on so many people's lists. That is M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. I do not view this movie as a horror film. I guess it kind of is it for the first 20 minutes, but it's more of a thriller and mystery for me. I just kept seeing this on so many lists that I figured I'd have to put it on, even though I've already seen it. But I knew I could probably rewatch it and talk about it easier than I could something like Infinity Pool. M. Night Shyamalan is a very interesting character because most people view his earlier works as far superior to the more recent ones, and I find that very interesting that a director could get worse as he goes. I really loved Signs. The Sixth Sense was made by M. Night Shyamalan, okay. Yeah, I like his earlier works, don't like any of the new stuff. But I saw the previews for Knock at the Cabin, I was like, this might be an okay movie, so I gave it a try. It was fine. I liked it, so let's talk about it. The Knock at the Cabin is a very polarizing film for multiple reasons. I don't understand why. There were critics who were very harsh of it. I mean, critics as in people, not actual movie critics. Those people kind of suck anyway, so let's ignore them. There were people who were very critical of the movie who read the book, and they didn't like the ending of this movie. I haven't read the book. I think it's a newer book. Then you had the weirdos online who were almost these old school atheists who were really mad that there was religion mentioned in this movie. Now, this movie does sort of touch on Revelation, but not really. This is not a Christian film, and it does not really encompass what Revelation is about by any means. This movie does not try to push religion on you. But at the same time, other people were like, no, this was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. Like, yeah, that's the right way to look at this movie. So Knock at the Cabin begins with a little girl innocuously capturing crickets or grasshoppers outside when a stranger walks up to her, but not just any stranger. No, it's Dave Bautista, which is supposed to signify some sort of intimidation because he's a real big buff guy, a big buff guy. A buff, real big, real guy. This leads to him having a conversation with her about catching bugs. When we see coming down the dirt road to this cabin out in the middle of the woods where they're camping or staying at, they're all carrying these assorted weird weapons.
I'm here to be your friend, so hopefully we won't be strangers for too long. What's your name?
What everyone calls me when.
Well, it's nice to meet you. My name's Leonard.
This causes the little girl to look out and be like, what the f? And run inside to tell her fathers. Yes, this movie contains a gay couple who have a adopted child. I don't know if that's like that in the book, or if Hollywood was just trying to push some sort of social thing on us. No problem with gay people here, I don't really care, but you know how movies and Hollywood can be. If you don't, be mad at me. Little girl goes inside and tells her dads what she saw. They, of course, are very dismissive and are like, oh, whatever. From one of the dads, though, we get a funny Jehovah's Witness joke.
You have to come inside right now. They're strangers and they want to come in and they're scary.
Oh, whoa, slow down.
Hurry now!
Hey, okay, come in. We're coming inside, okay?
There were 4 of them. The big one, his name's Leonard. He says we had to help them. He says they have the most important job in the history of the world.
Jehovah's Witnesses? Great.
They have these weapons.
If there are any Jehovah's Witnesses out there, I am not sorry, you guys are heretics. After realizing the little girl wasn't lying and there really are 4 strangers out there with weapons, the dads quickly run around and lock all the doors and windows while trying to figure out what these people want. The beginning of this movie is genuinely thrilling, and I do like the horror elements that were used in this. They are more lighthearted though, with a bit of comedic relief, which is why I don't really consider it a horror movie. Like when you have 2 characters fighting over something and you can obviously tell that one character doesn't want to hurt the other, then he still gets hit to the ground and gets a concussion. It's not really horror to me, but we're talking about the movie anyway, so let's go on.
It didn't have to be like this. Get one out of here.
After a fight, we then cut back to them and they're tied up in these 2 chairs with these 4 strangers standing in front of them, staring at them. They go on to explain that they don't want to hurt these people even though they have them tied up in chairs in their cabin, which they broke into. Instead, they start describing one by one their lives and who they are to the people. I'm going to be calling the characters by their names that matter. We have Eric. He's the dad with no beard, and we have Andrew, who's the dad with a bit of facial hair. He's the more masculine dad. Eric played in that one TV show, Mind Hunter. That was a good TV show. I don't know what Andrew's played in. Oh, then you have Batista, who's called Leonard in the story. I'm just going to be calling him Dave Batista. The other people, their names really aren't important or applicable. You have Rupert Grint, who played Ron Weasley in Harry Potter. He's in this. I don't think the other characters matter enough to mention, though, so let's move on. They go on explaining to the family that they have a purpose here. It's almost a shared thing between the family and us as an audience. They all seemingly come from these very different backgrounds, from different cities and different lives. It also gives them a chance to almost plead their case to the family. You'll see why in a minute. After everybody's done telling the family who they are, Leonard confronts the dad and explains why they're here.
The 4 of us are here to prevent the apocalypse. We, and when I say we, I mean everyone in this cabin, can stop it from happening, but only with your help.
You are having a psychological break of some kind.
Your family must choose to willingly sacrifice one of the 3 of you in order to prevent the apocalypse. After you make what I know is an impossible decision, you must then kill the one you choose. If you fail to choose, or if you fail to follow through with the sacrifice, the world will end.
Now, the 4 of them wearing these very specific colors makes sense, like they're trying to represent the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, as I stated earlier. It doesn't fully follow Revelation, though, which is why I said this isn't really a Christian film. It just seems like a guy who heard stories about Revelation and wrote a book. As I was saying, the 4 of them claim to have gotten these exact visions, the same as each one of them, showing the end of the world. And they need this family to choose a single one of them, so they have to choose a single person inside their family to sacrifice. So say Andrew and the child are like, hey, we can sacrifice Eric, or whatever it may be. They need that in order to stop the apocalypse, which is why I'm assuming that irreligious people got very upset. They're like, oh, why would you have to sacrifice somebody to God? That's really stupid. Anyway, let's go on. It's after this that they're given the choice of who to sacrifice.
I've been shown exactly what will happen if you choose not to make a sacrifice. First, the cities will drown. Then a terrible plague will descend, and people will writhe with fever and mucus will fill their lungs.
This is psychotic. It's delusional.
The skies will fall and crash to the earth like pieces of glass. For every no you give us, we will unleash a plague for the sins of humanity. Will you make a choice?
Like any sane person, the family decides not to sacrifice anyone. We realize how serious this group of strangers is, though, when they just hack up Rupert Grint.
It isn't real. This isn't real.
After the death of the first guy, we hear Batista say, a part of humanity has been judged. We then see Batista put on the TV to show the family that yes, in fact, this is real, and we'll show you proof. I have a problem with this, but let's talk about it quickly. There are these earthquakes happening where tsunamis are hitting parts of the coast, but the problem is it all goes down rather quickly to where yes, these are very out of the blue, strange occurrences that would make anyone be like, what the f***? But the pacing is so bad. It happens so quickly. Like, this just in, another earthquake has struck this place. Oh, wow, a giant tsunami has hit Portland, Oregon. Oh, this just in, this has happened. It's so fast. I feel like the book probably doesn't have these pacing issues, and there's moments for us and the characters in the story to wait and try to fully indulge ourselves in this story that these strangers are giving us, to where we can judge or try to question the mystery of whether these strangers are telling the truth. This happening so quickly to us just doesn't work. I wish they could have tried to portray as more time happened. Instead of making the story last only like 2 days, maybe they try to push it on for a week where these people are trying to do this. It just doesn't make sense with how quickly it goes down. We'll see more of that later. After a while, though, the little girl tries to escape, and she gets caught. This then leads to Andrew talking to Batista, and he's like, hey, I met the Rupert Grint guy before. He attacked me in a bar because I was gay. Just some of that. That isn't proven until later, but yes, that did happen, so it gives him reason to be like, yeah, I don't trust these people, so he deals with that the entire time. I think somewhere around here, Eric also sees a weird light that almost looks like an angel or God or somebody giving him a message like, hey brother, this is real, but you can chalk that up to his concussion. Anyway, Andrew thinks these people are targeting them, and Eric kind of believes them, and this gets more obvious throughout the movie. The strangers are like, hey guys, we're gonna go ahead and pick this up tomorrow where things are going to go down a lot quicker, so we'll see you then. Here's the next day where we see the little girl bringing a knife to Daddy Andrew or Daddy Eric, and we see them kind of cutting behind their backs while this is happening, but we continue on with the judgment of humanity. One of the characters, a young woman, she goes on to try to get the approval of the family, almost being like, hey guys, please don't make me die as a judgment to humanity. I have this young son, shows them pictures, tries to just prove to them that like she saw her son die and how awful it was to see the end of the world. Needless to say, Eric and Andrew don't choose to sacrifice anyone, and she's killed. Batista quickly says a part of humanity has been judged, and we go to the TV. The TV shows a virus that's been spreading, and it's been attacking children, like it's actually been killing children at a rather quick rate. This seems to have been something that happened before the story, but now it's amping up and people are dying really quick. It just doesn't make sense due to the pacing, although it does completely outshine a virus that we have all recently experienced that didn't quite hurt children. I think that if this movie would have went on for another hour to try to make this pacing problem work, it would have just been boring though. People already complained that the movie was too long and boring, while I'm here like, this movie really should have been longer to make me like think this was more real. We see Andrew arguing about the TV, pointing out the flaws of what they're showing him.
I've been reading about these X9 cases for months already. You know that. It isn't a fucking plague. It's a news report. They all knew about it before they showed up here and knowingly made it a part of their narrative.
It's right after this that the escape that they were doing while they're cutting their ropes happens. Eric is able to break free and cause a hubbub, while Andrew also gets out of his knots. Andrew runs outside to his truck to get his gun. For whatever reason, he has his gun locked up in a gun case in the truck and doesn't have it on him. I don't know why you would be walking around the middle of the woods without a gun. There are bears, but go on, Andrew. The problem I have with this, though, is once he gets into the truck, he has to take his gun out of a gun safe, which makes sense. He has a child. But the gun is unloaded in the gun safe. Who the leaves a gun in a gun safe unloaded? There are no bullets in the magazine.
Leave whatever you're going for. Get out of the car and come inside.
Who does that? How does that make sense? If somebody breaks into your house and tries to kill you, and your gun is in the gun safe with a magazine that doesn't have any bullets in it, you have to do one by one. One bullet, one bullet, one bullet, one bullet, one bullet. Why the fuck? Then you gotta put the magazine in. What? You're gonna die. That made me mad. It's just like, it was there for some sort of tension in the story, but what the if you have a gun locked up in a gun safe that you know the code to, of course, that makes sense. You can easily just shoot it right after, right? But no, it doesn't even have bullets in it. This gun is unloaded. You're trying to protect your family due to you getting attacked by this bottle over your head by Rupert Grint, which is funny that Ron Weasley hit you over the head with a bottle. Why is your gun not loaded? Oh my god. At least put the magazine with bullets in it in the gun safe. What are you doing, brother? Me personally, I'd just leave it on my person in a holster on my body to protect myself. If someone wants to hurt me or my family, you're dead, bud. This man is so ill prepared. I swear. The end of the world is happening around him and he doesn't even have a gun. He owns a gun, not on him. Okay. A cougar wants to grab my daughter's head and carry her off. Well, let me go into my truck and spend 10 minutes loading my gun to save her. Yep. He ends up shooting the yellow shirt chick and running into the house, aims the gun at Batista. They try to lock him in the bathroom. This doesn't work though.
You'll see that everything I said was going to happen has happened.
No one's gonna do what you said.
Terrifying images as we see yet another passenger aircraft plummet to the ground.
It's after this where Batista is able to steal the gun from him, so not only is he inept at keeping a gun to protect his family, which is something you should do, but he lets Batista steal it from him, and Batista is the good guy in the story. He's awesome. We all love Batista. He's a teacher for children, and he's a great guy. He takes the gun from him. He's like, no, motherfuckers, we're going to judge humanity. The yellow shirt woman isn't dead yet, so he kills her, and he's like, part of humanity's been judged, giving them the chance to sacrifice. They don't. He then turns on the TV, and here is where we see something that really proves the fact that this isn't just something they prepared to with them because they're gay or whatever. It's very much a real happening.
Why did you turn it on?
Local and international governments are investigating whether there's any correlation between the crashes. We have yet to receive death tolls or receive any statements from the airline.
I thought it wasn't real.
When planes start suddenly cutting their engines off and falling from the sky, the world is ending, my friend. It's here where Eric is obviously like, oh shit, the world's ending. Whereas Andrew is just coping with the fact that this is all fake. Like, he's in ultra hard cope mode, like, no, you guys planned this. This is all fake. Oh, this is just circumstance. No, he's being annoying.
The skies were falling, crashed to the earth like pieces of glass.
We now have confirmation of as many as 700 airplanes having crashed without warning.
We're getting word of more airlines.
How the fuck did you know what she was gonna say? Is this some closed circuit TV? Did you guys pump this in? I don't know what's going on here. I think it's all coincidence. Some horrible, unexplainable coincidence. Or it has to be a trick. I have to believe that!
Some time passes and Batista and them go outside. They take the little girl up into this treehouse or some shit. Then the two dads are just talking to Batista. Batista's like, well, it's time, boys. Are you going to sacrifice somebody? They, of course, don't. And here is where the most badass line comes from this movie.
All of humanity has been judged.
With Batista dead, of course, world is going to end unless one of them are sacrificed. He said before he died that they'll have a couple minutes after it happens. We get some dialogue between Eric and Andrew. Before this, we see lightning striking and all of the woods around their house are burning down. I kind of wish here that there were meteorites or something falling to Earth, destroying shit. I just would have preferred a much stronger end of the world moment here. I guess this still leaves us a second guess of like, whoa, were they really telling the truth or not? But I mean, you see planes just randomly falling out of the sky. Obviously, this is real, right? Like, planes don't just get EMP'd and fall out of the sky. That doesn't make any sense. You might as well go all out. Eric, fully believing that this is the end of the world, is able to convince Andrew while they're all crying together. It's a pretty emotional moment. It works pretty well. The acting here is pretty good. The acting throughout the movie is really well done. The little girl, I think this was the first movie she's ever been in. She did a fantastic job for like a 5-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid. And of course, Eric, The guy that played Mindhunter, he's a good actor. Andrew did a good job. It's Batista, by the way, is actually a decent actor. He's not just a wrestler. Pretty good. This all does feel really rushed, but we hear an argument between them, and we hear a gunshot where Andrew walks outside to the treehouse and gets the little girl. Seems like Eric was able to convince Andrew, though. Andrew and little girl drive off. They end up at some diner. They go into the diner and see on TV that planes have suddenly stopped crashing to Earth. The virus is no longer killing people. And everything's kind of okay. It's been several hours since the last earthquake. We then get a last shot of them slowly driving off with music from earlier in the flashbacks of the movie that I skipped. And it's all a happy ending. The world's been saved. Now, I think here, even though I haven't read the book, I read several reviews of this movie. People describe this movie as, or the book, as ending a bit sad. Like, maybe they didn't actually end, like, the world wasn't actually going to end and they killed Eric, or maybe the world ended anyway. I don't know how the book ended. If any of you know, you can comment down below. I think I would have preferred a more nihilistic ending, just because it would have been better story writing. Nevertheless, The Cabin in the Woods is a fun movie that I enjoyed the first time I watched it, and I enjoyed it just as much the second time around. I actually like this movie more than another movie we're going to talk about soon. I was going to rate it higher, but I realized that if I on that movie before I did this, people would really hate me, and I don't want a bunch of negative comments and dislikes like the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, which sucked. If you watched Five Nights at Freddy's and disliked my video, you suck. That movie sucks. Your fan base sucks. Anyway, personal hatred and vindication out of the way. I think the second time watching it around, I'm gonna give it like a 6.5 out of 10. Isn't a bad movie. Yeah, I liked it. And I sought it out before I watched this video, so if that says anything, it's not bad. Can't say that I'm looking forward to M. Night Shyamalan's next work, but good luck, M. Night. Hope you do better, brother. So you know that movie I talked about that was going to be controversial? I didn't realize while saying that, but our third film is going to be the one that's controversial. I have my reasons for putting it at third. Talk to me. This is a lot of people's favorite movie of the year. Not even favorite horror movie of the year. This is a lot of people's favorite movie of the year. I'm not saying I don't like this movie, and I'm not saying I think it sucks. I think this is genuinely a good film. But there are a couple things that hold this movie back to a level that I don't like it. I don't like this movie. I do think that this movie was a great first film by the directors of this film, these two twins from Australia, I think. But this movie, there are problems that we're going to have to discuss. And I did not enjoy watching this for the second time. There are so many positives about this film and how original it is that I have to put it at third. I really wished I could have put this higher. I was so excited for this movie, and I think that kind of lowered it for me. Talk to Me begins with a guy going to this party, running around asking anyone if they've seen this other person. After a while, he makes it through this house party and is able to find the guy. Turns out it's his brother. He finds him in pretty bad shape. He has these sort of scars or scratches around himself. This dude tries to drag him out of the house in front of everybody. Everybody's kind of looking like, what the hell? And it goes to an area that I did not quite expect. The kid that he dragged out of the house, his younger brother, has a knife, which he jabs into his brother's chest right after this, where the party's like in shock. You're able to go, oh! He jabs the knife into his own head. This is a pretty brutal opening to a film. Definitely caught me off guard. It's after this silly introduction that we meet our main character of the story, our very emotionally detached main character. Her name is Mia. The main reason I don't like this movie is because of Mia. I cannot stand Mia. I understand the reason they wrote her the way they did, but she's probably the biggest problem in the movie for me. I've never had a movie ruined by a single character until this movie came along. To explain why Mia is so emotionally detached or messed up, we learn that her mother died 2 years ago. 2 years ago is a long time to be as up as she is, but some people deal with things slower than others, I guess. I've lost people certainly very close to me, and it didn't take me 2 years to get over that. Moving on, let's explain the story before I bitch about Mia too long, because there's going to be a lot of complaining about Mia throughout this review. Mia gets a call from her best friend's little brother saying that he needs a ride home because his sister was unable to pick him up. When Mia manages to get Riley home to his sister, it turns out that Jade wasn't actually that busy. She was just lying in her bed texting her boyfriend. This obviously makes Mia kind of annoyed, but throughout this interaction and dialogue, we learn how unhealthy the relationship is between Jade and Mia and how jealous Mia is of this boyfriend. Throughout the film, we learn just how reliant Mia is on Jade, which is kind of concerning. Anyway, Mia and Jade see a social media post of this weird hand, and people, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll show you.
Have you seen the group chat? You mean the one I invited you to? It's Haley's video. You're doing it again tonight. No. Look to see if it's real.
It's almost like a party game that they're playing, where they're able to talk to ghosts or something. Of course, Mia and Jade haven't been to these parties, so they don't believe it. This causes Mia to want to go to one of these parties and see what it's all about. Jade tries to talk Mia out of it since it's the 2-year anniversary of her mother's passing, but Mia manipulates Jade into going anyway. Later that night, Jade, Mia, and Riley, who, by the way, Riley, who's much younger than Jade and Mia, is able to come because Mia's like, yeah, sure you can come. I'll talk your sister into allowing you to. He's like in 8th grade and he's able to go to this high school party, and you can tell that Jade and Mia are probably like juniors or seniors in high school. It's kind of weird how much Mia manipulates Jade throughout the story, but it makes her so ass. At the party, it quickly becomes apparent that Mia is so far detached from her classmates, is entirely withdrawn from them. They're looking at her like they've just seen a ghost when she walks in.
She's fine.
No, she's not fine. She irritates the out of me.
She's literally done nothing to you.
She's so pretty, man.
After this conversation, things quickly shift when all of the teens kind of get together and say that they're going to play the game.
All right, let's do this. All right, somebody time it. Soon as she lets it in, it cannot go for more than 90 seconds. Am I clear?
What happens after 90 seconds?
They'll want to stay.
And if you die while they're in you, they'll have you forever.
So lame.
Hey, I'm just relaying what I've been told, okay?
Oh, fuck, dude.
Trust me, it's gonna be tight.
The most interesting part of this movie is this hand, which is never fully explained. It enables whoever's holding this hand to talk to the dead and interact with them. Only they can see it. But not only can they see and interact with this dead person, but they can almost become a vessel for the dead person when they say, I let you in.
Now say, talk to me.
Talk to me.
During this interaction, when people let the dead or spirit into them, we see some pretty spooky interactions, like a door opening and closing in an unexplainable manner. So whatever it is can interact with the world around them. This is not really used other than maybe like one more time throughout the movie. Kind of seems pointless.
Talk to me.
Hey, don't let go of me. Do not let go.
I can't look at it.
You don't have to look at it. You don't have to look at it. Just say it.
I can't.
Say it.
I let you in.
There you are.
This whole portion of the film is just us experiencing whatever the hell this strange hand offers. And the next day we go to them at school, where Jade pretty much invites everyone, especially the people that are in control of this hand, to come over to a party at her house because her mother won't be home. Here is where the main story beat unfolds. There's like a 2-minute long compilation of all of them laughing and giggling at these weird interactions with these spirits through the hand, until Riley asks Mia if he can try it out. He's way younger and nobody his age around them has experienced this hand. So Jade is like, hell no, I'm not gonna let this happen. But Mia is able to manipulate Jade into letting Riley try it anyway. All the other characters around them are telling Mia, yeah, he can do it, but it should only be for 60 seconds, not the 90 seconds that we say is what people should be allowed to be a vessel for the spirit. This quickly shifts though when the spirit enters the boy.
I don't want you to hate me.
Mom? Hey, that's 50 seconds.
No, please don't close it off. Let's say it's my mum, please.
I love you both, baby.
I love you too, Mum.
I'm so proud of you.
Now that Mia thinks she's talking to her mother, whatever this weird spirit is, it's obviously not her mom, because these things have a very evil intention. He lets this boy stay under that influence for way too long, like way too long. Everybody's like, no, pull him out of it, pull him out of it. She's like, no, I gotta talk to my mom. It goes horribly. I can't show this part of the movie on YouTube, I don't think. The kid ends up smashing his head into this table brutally, like super brutally. It's so visceral and gory, and tries to pull his own eyeball out of his head. By the way, no one around him tries to stop it from happening. Nobody grabs his arms or tries to pull his hand away from the hand. Mia makes a very weak attempt at pulling them away, and he flies across the room, which is the part where I said spirits could interact with the world. It pushes him, I guess. When he's across the room smashing his face into the table, nobody does anything for like 20 or 30 seconds. They're just letting him go boom, 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 boom. Mia's just like, oh my god, it's my mom. Oh my. I hate her, man. She's right next to this kid and doesn't even try to pull him away at all. It's not until Jade runs in from another room because she didn't want to witness it. She's like, I don't want to be a part of this. My brother shouldn't be doing this. And she puts her hand there. It gets smashed on the kid. She pulls the hand away. We then see the cops get called and everybody panicking like, oh my god, we're gonna be in so much shit for this happening. We then cut to Jade and her boyfriend and mom being at the hospital for the kid, who's wrapped up in all sorts of bandages because he's all up. He looks like a monstrosity at this point due to how much damage was done to him. Mia shows up at the hospital. The mother, well, Jade doesn't want anything to do with her, of course, because it's her fault this happened. It's 100% her fault this happened. It is sort of Jade's fault too, but Jade was super against it, but she was manipulated. How much could you blame on Jade? Maybe the other partygoers, but that's not their friend or their friend's brother. Jade's mom, who doesn't have a single clue about what happened, blames it on Mia and Jade and is like, you guys gave him some sort of drug to where this happened. Mia is kicked out of the hospital by Jade's mom and her. Jade's boyfriend takes Mia home, and like while they're leaving the hospital, Mia is running after a spirit that she sees as her mom, almost chasing ghosts or something. I'm going to try to zoom past the ending of this movie because after watching Mia manipulate Jade and allow her brother to get as hurt as he did, and then be manipulated by this spirit who she thinks is her mom, I cannot stand this manipulative, unempathetic, evil character that Mia is. I get she has to be this way for this to happen, but holy shit, is she so impossible to empathize for or to care about. I was just, at this point of the movie, I was hoping that Mia got killed. I wanted to see the house catch on fire and watch Mia's body erupt in flames. I cannot stand this. I hate her. So yeah, Jade's boyfriend takes Mia back to the house. He's like, oh, I'll stay with you. I understand how hard this is for you, because he was there. They go to sleep. We see a weird scene that's really creepy where her mother's corpse is holding her. The makeup is really good here. That's one thing they did really well in this scene, is the dead bodies that are shown, the spirits, are very creepy. During this almost out-of-body dream experience, we see Mia. I don't even think I can really explain this. I'm just gonna show it to you.
Oh, what the? Mia! Oh!
Where is she? Oh my god, oh my god. Oh my god, they followed us. Whoever we contacted, they followed us.
What are you talking about?
She was sucking your foot.
You were sucking my feet, Mia. You had my foot in your mouth.
What? No, I didn't.
I'm gonna go.
So while Mia sees this weird spirit sucking on this kid's toes, it turns out it's actually her sucking on them toes. Probably the funniest moment to come out of all the films we've watched here in these 5 movies. The kid waking up with a woman that he once dated, who now he's dating her best friend, seeing his ex-girlfriend sucking on his toes. Hey brother, I gotta go. This is strange. So the toe sucker Mia is left alone. We get some things where a ghouly ghost does some crazy stuff. Her dad tries to interact. She like kills her dad or some gets some ghost to tell her that the little boy, Riley, Jade's brother, is going to be stuck in the spirit realm unless they do something. She takes the hand there. Nothing happens. She just sees him stuck with all these shadow people or some this goes on after that wasn't successful, and Mia gets manipulated more while she's manipulating everybody else and being a character. Her mom tells her like, hey kid, you have to kill Riley so he doesn't end up stuck here, even though I think they're trying to manipulate her into thinking that if she kills them he won't be stuck, but really that will get him stuck. I don't like this movie. I'm realizing more and more while talking about it that I just genuinely don't like this film. Mia goes to the hospital to go kill Riley. She somehow manages, while the mom and Jade are gone, to pull Riley out on a wheelchair. She goes to take him to this highway next to the hospital to push him into traffic.
I'm so proud of you. Take care, my darling
Mia got pushed into traffic, not the wheelchair. Jade managed to push Mia out and save her brother. The movie ends with Jade and Riley being fine, but Mia obviously waking up on the side of the road dead. We then get the most expected ending that we could have ever gotten out of this film, where Mia is walking around the spirit world until she's on the other end of a hand. She was on that end letting a spirit in. Now we see some guys in France telling her to be let in. I summed this movie up rather quickly because I really don't like it. I was left very underwhelmed after watching this movie. I should mention the things I liked about this movie. The idea was very original. The makeup of the dead people was super creepy, but they made the most unlikable character I've ever seen in a horror film. I just wish this movie could have been better for me by me actually caring about the main character. I liked Jade a whole hell of a lot more than I liked Mia. I think I'd give this movie like a 6.5 out of 10. I don't want to talk about Mia anymore though, or I might murder somebody myself, so let's move on. Our next movie coming in at second place was a massive surprise for me. It's a Spanish film. I had 2 options for Spanish films that came out this year that were rated very highly. I only wanted to do one of them for this video though. It was very hard for me to write notes on a Spanish film in the first place, so after doing this one I was like, there's no way I'm gonna do another one. When you have to write notes while also reading subtitles, when I'm watching an English film, I can listen to the movie and write notes at the same time, but when watching a Spanish film, since I don't speak Spanish, I have to watch it, listen to it, and then write notes. I have to pause the movie, so this took a really long time. This movie was made in Argentina, probably the only Argentinian film I've ever watched. I understand why everyone liked this movie as much as they did. It was #1 on so many lists, and I think it was pretty cool. The movie's called When Evil Lurks. It's a completely fresh take on the possession genre. It has a very strong first and second act. It's a little weak in the third act, but due to how original it is and how fresh it felt, this movie, like Talk to Me, although this movie's much better than Talk to Me, is gonna go pretty high on my rating. When Evil Lurks begins with 2 brothers who both seem very on edge while preparing for a hunt the next day. They're just sort of pacing around the room, loading their guns, getting ready for the next day while looking outside. The 2 protagonists are brothers. Their names are Pedro and Jaime. Jaime? I don't know how to pronounce Spanish. Pedro's easy. Jaime. Jimmy. Jaime. I don't know what I'm gonna call him in this movie, but let's try Jaime. Pedro's the brother with the full beard, and Jaime is the one with the mustache, so Jaime's obviously cooler. The next day, we see these guys go out on their hunt. They are looking for what appears to them to be a puma who's been attacking livestock in the area. The brothers have this assumption that it's a puma until they find a body next to their neighbor's home. The body outside is that of a human, and it doesn't look like it's been ripped in half or eaten. It looks like it's been cut by almost a blade. Realizing a puma couldn't have done the damage that was done to this body, the brothers follow the trail. At this little shack or house is where the story really unfolds. As it turns out, these people are hiding a secret. A very big secret that is kind of hard to explain. A big dirty secret. This land is owned by a landowner who is renting it out to this family. This family consists of one mother and two sons. You have a younger son who's perfectly fine. The mom's obviously fine too, but then you have the older brother. Oh, it's such a disgusting body horror element to this story. He's almost possessed by something. The movie reveals information at a very slow rate through dialogue, but we learn that they call this character Rotten. He turns into this big, fat, I don't know how else to say it, blub of rotten flesh. It's the grossest thing I've ever seen. He just has pus all over him, and he's this big, fat character. He's possessed by a demon, and this demon is going to be birthed by this Rotten. So I'll be using the word rotten to describe a possessed person throughout this film. With demonic possession as the story of this movie, it's done in a very original way. I don't know if this is a South American thing. I know this would be a Catholic thing to have demonic possession, but having a character bloat into this mass that's birthing a demon, but he's rotting from the outside in, is very interesting. Every character in the movie early on also seems to completely understand what a rotten is, and it threw me off. I had to read a synopsis of the film midway through to just kind of understand what was going on because of how vague the dialogue was between the characters. It's almost like they're putting you in this universe and they just expect you to follow along. It is explained pretty well throughout the movie, but you feel very dropped in, almost in a foreign land, like you don't understand their language. It is Spanish and don't get anything they're talking about. The person that they found cut in half is what the characters call a cleaner, and the guy that was meant to come clean this Rotten up, who's been sitting here for a year, was killed outside and cut in half cleanly. So right now, this big rotten ball of a person is in gestation, about to produce a demon. Pedro and Jaime learn of this. They go outside knowing they can't do anything themselves, and they head to the sheriff's office. At the sheriff's office is where I was like questioning what the is going on in this movie, because they talk to the sheriff and they're like, hey, we found a Rotten at this house. They're like, yeah, the governor's heard of this. He knows what's going on. They were supposed to have sent a cleaner, right? And they're like, well, the cleaner's dead. They're like, well, we can't do anything. And everybody seemed so careless. But going throughout the film, it seems like this whole Rotten situation is so serious, but nobody seems to care. There's a demon who's about to unleash hell on Earth, and you guys are like, we can't do anything about it. In hindsight, it doesn't make sense. Pedro and Jaime leave the sheriff's office, and they head to the landowner himself. Why the did they not want to do something about a guy who's about to birth a demon? Why are they not wanting to clean that up as quick as possible? In my mind, if I'm living in the town I'm living in, and there's a neighbor of mine who is birthing a demon and he's a big ball of pus and blood and nastiness, I'd want to do something about it. The characters don't seem to care, but then they act so seriously about it later and know so much. I don't get it. I don't get it. So now we head to another main important character of the story, Ruiz.
No van a venir a ver el cadáver, mucho menos el embichado, ya me lo aseguraron. Me dijeron que no es un asunto de ellos. ¿Y el intendente entonces? Lo llamaron. Estaba enterado ya hace un año. Se hizo el sote el viejo.
He's the landowner that this family rents from. Pedro and Jaime go up to him and they're like, hey, there's a Rotten on your land. And Ruiz is less than thrilled about this. When Ruiz learns of this, he's obviously very understanding of what a Rotten is, but he comes to the conclusion that the government has this weird kind of plan to take his land from him. And this is all a setup. We see Ruiz, without Pedro and Jaime, go to this family's house, and he aims a shotgun at the rotten. And we hear the mom talk about something. When you use gunpowder or a gun against these guys and kill them, all it does is make the possession or this demon spread quicker. Ruiz ends up pulling the gun away from him and is like, I'm not gonna shoot it. Even though he's pissed off. And he goes back to Pedro and Jaime, and he's like, all right, guys, I have a plan. Since there's no cleaner that can come, because the government's full of bureaucracy and dumb we're gonna take this matter and put it in our own hands, right? Pedro, Jaime, and Ruiz are going to lift this gross with a blanket into the back of his truck, and we see this gross scene of them lifting it with the sheet. The sheet breaks, and we see this nasty ooze just draining from the bottom. It's so nasty. This film does that body horror and nastiness really well, even though you can tell some of it's CGI. They get him into the back of the truck, and their plan, or Ruiz's plan, is to haul it off several hundred kilometers or miles away from where this is going on. To my British and American audience, I think we all use miles. What's going on with Ruiz's overreaction to this, even though he knows them trying to drive this thing off is going to be a bad idea because everyone knows about these rottens and they know about how to deal with them, or at least they know that you have to deal with them in a specific way. They try to drive it off anyway. I mean, it is his land, so maybe he's feeling defensive and is going to act stupid. That makes sense, but also it doesn't make sense at the same time. This is silly. What happens is they end up driving it off for a while. Then we see a scene where a kid is on a bike in the middle of the road. They have to swerve to not hit him. They stop for a second and then drive off farther, get ready to dump him underneath this bridge several hundred miles away. When they go to the back of the truck, they see the nasty slime and he's not there. They assume like, well, maybe he fell out of the truck when we swerved out of the way of that kid, or that kid stole him. Feeling defeated, like they know things are going to end badly because of this, they just head back home, and you're like, okay. The next day, we fully come to terms with how bad things truly are, though. When Ruiz and his wife, who is pregnant at this time, go out to their animals, and Ruiz notices that one of the goats is very different than the others, like he's possessed. Ruiz grabs a shotgun, and he's like, oh, you, goat. You're not okay. All the other goats walk away, and it's just this one. He shoots it in the head, even though his wife is like, no, that'll make it worse. You cannot use the gunpowder against the bad guys. It's so stupid. He shoots it. His wife reacts in a very strange way. She hits Ruiz in the back of the head with an axe. A boom! Axe to the head. He's dead, right? Then she takes the axe and shoves it into her own face, front way. She's pregnant, by the way. The baby, Ruiz, and her are all dead because Ruiz shot this goat. Pedro and Jaime, they go to pick up Pedro's family. Jaime's gonna go pick up their mom. Pedro goes to his family, and stuff gets even crazier from here on. So Pedro goes to his family after dropping Jaime off, and he tries to explain to his ex-wife. We learn a bunch of stuff about how Pedro left his family over something, and like he has 2 sons, but then there's a stepdad here, and he has the daughter with the wife. The wife doesn't believe him at all. She's like, wow, you left us. You're such an asshole. You suck so bad. You're the worst person ever, Pedro. Pedro, you're so bad. That kind of sounds more Italian than it does Spanish, but Pedro sucks, right? So it's like, why would you do this to me? You're trying to manipulate me, Pedro. It's so dumb.
No, vos no vas a entrar. Estás violando la perimetral. Soy consciente de eso, ¿eh? ¿Qué es esta escena hasta ahora? Me lo estás deportando a los chicos, me lo despertaste a Jair.
Hay un embichado en el pueblo.
Abrigo, ¿querés que llame al abogado?
Llama a la policía, pero sacalo de acá. Me está asustando a los nenes.
During this, possession is spreading after shooting the goat or whatever, and the dog, the family dog, becomes a demon. It bites their daughter and just grabs her by the head and takes her outside, right? During this, the stepdad sees that when Pedro's like, oh, what's going on? The stepdad's like, grabs his gun. The guy goes and tracks down this dog, ends up shooting it and grabbing his daughter. Meanwhile, Pedro's flustering around with his wife, who's a total dickhead and idiot, and she's like, oh no, I know what that rotten is, but I do not believe you, Pedro. You are a drunk idiot. The daughter comes back, or suddenly, while Pedro and his wife are arguing outside, and she's like, hey mama, my stepdad, my daddy is going to hit you with the car and kill you. He say he go and kill you. While she's outside, Pedro's inside with his sons, and he's like, all right, we're gonna get in the car. Where are the keys? He has to have his like dumb son. Oh, that's bad. We can't. we'll put that in anyway, but who cares? He's like kind of like Down syndrome or something. Autistic. It's much more than autism. But he gets him the keys. They go outside. Pedro and his two sons are getting in the car. One of them's normal. I'm gonna say normal because you. They get in the car and we see outside the stepdad come and run over the mom, like just brutally kill her in front of the daughter. The daughter's okay because she's possessed by a demon or something. Even though later on the kids, oh, we're gonna get into that. This movie makes no sense. Pedro drives off. We then see him meeting his brother and his mom. Now they get in the car. His mom's like explaining all this backstory to us, but at this gas station where they go and stop, Pedro gets a call on the phone, and it's from his ex-wife, who just got hit by a car, very brutally, might I add. And she's like, hey, my sons are gone. I'm going to come for them. And Pedro's crying because he's like, I just watched you die and I had love for you once, and this is a crazy situation. His brother Jaime is able to calm him down, and they're able to go and leave to wherever Jaime wants them to go to stop. We see them stop at a friend of Jaime's, this older woman who he used to years back. We learn throughout this that this woman that Jaime knows has dealt with rottens before, and she was in a town that when this very first started, and I think she knows how to clean these rottens up. They explain how they took this rotten far away. She's like, why the would you do this? And overnight, bad happens. So the grandma is staying with the Down syndrome boy. I don't know how to say that. Is that even politically correct? Who cares? He's possessed by a demon, and like, because he's Down syndrome, the demon doesn't know what to do with him. He can't even talk. So it's like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm just gonna around. The demon has no clue. Down syndrome kid is possessed. Grandma notices that. They all notice that. The younger kid, who's perfectly normal, yes, I said normal, that is normal. He has no extra chromosomes. He is a perfect human. He's a normal human. He gets taken by the mom, who is very obviously a demon. The lady that Jaime slept with, she's like, hey, Pedro. I'm getting canceled for this. You cannot go after your son because you love him too much. You have too much care for him. So Pedro can't go after him. So they're like, oh, Jaime, even though you're my brother, you can go after him because you don't really care about what happens, right? This goes so bad, but it also doesn't make sense. I'm going to bitch about that right now. Okay, if my little sister, if she had a son or a daughter and they were taken by somebody, I would kill a human being to get that kid back, right? Like, that is my niece or nephew. But Jaime is not expected to care, and he only cares because... Okay, let's move on with the movie. This ending does not make sense. This is where the movie falls apart. Up until this point, it doesn't make any sense, but I like it. Great movie. So Pedro and this woman, Mithra or whatever the hell her name is, end up going back to town. They end up finding this schoolhouse or government building, and they think they've found where this rotten is, right? They end up digging up the floorboards. All these kids who don't seem possessed, but there's this saying that evil loves children or children love evil or some shit. The children are like all sticking up for this. I don't get it. Maybe I'm not Spanish or Catholic enough to understand this. They find the rotten underneath the floorboards, and Pedro ends up getting absolutely betrayed or manipulated by the children to go against Mithra. We see Mithra get killed. Jaime's after the kid, okay? We're moving past this ending. Jaime's going after the woman. He sees the woman eating the child's brains. The child who we've become to like, oh, this is a good kid. We like him. Eating his brains. Jaime ends up crashing her into some tree, and then the woman's like, oh, Jaime, you so good. This is your baby. Turns out the reason Jaime was supposed to care about this kid because it was actually his? What? That's his brother. He should like the... I don't get it. But yeah, Jaime his brother's wife and had... Oh, that's terrible. That's so bad. Oh, Pedro things up, lets Mithra die. They can't stop the rotten. We see the demon get born. It's all covered in blood, and it's like a child coming out. Pedro gets in his truck and drives back. He goes inside. You know how I talked about how the Down syndrome kid was going to be possessed by a demon? Turns out that asshole ate the grandma. We see during a thing, he's eating ice cream, and he's spitting up blood and hair. He ate the grandma. Demons suck. We then see a scene at the end of the movie. I don't know how to say it on YouTube. They're all going to do something to get away from this world because they've just ended it. It sucks. It's bad. Demons are here. The Antichrist is here. The world's over. Oh, this movie has a very bad third act, and I would consider that third act to begin after the mother showed up and took the kid from the grandma. It's just so dumb and so silly. Poor Mexican grandma or Argentinian grandma, watching her get eaten. I don't want to watch a Spanish grandma get eaten. They're lovely people. They make great food. Wow, that's sad. When Evil Lurks has pacing issues, it has issues with storytelling. I wouldn't mind if a movie tries to explain everything through dialogue. It puts us in a world where everybody understands something and we understand nothing, and tries to explain that very slowly. I wish they would have explained it a little bit quicker. I liked the movie though. It was a really good movie. I had a great time watching it. I wanted to talk to other people about the movie because I thought the synopsis, like what was happening, was so interesting. The rotten and how that was gestating a demon baby was really cool. But I think I'd give it like a 7.5. This was genuinely a good experience to watch. I might even give it an 8. I enjoyed this movie, although I did bitch about it a lot and make fun of it. This movie is a great horror film. But now, my favorite horror movie of the year, and this movie is very scary, but also so funny on top of that. Let's talk about the movie 2023's Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise starts off with an introduction that is much like any other movie. It takes place in a cabin in the middle of the woods by a lake, obviously. It's kind of stupid. This chick is possessed and this girl and this guy get killed by this obviously possessed person. It doesn't really matter until the end of the film. But yeah, this woman's possessed and kills 2 people in the woods. With this fake out in the middle of the woods, you're thinking like, oh, The Evil Dead? A cabin in the woods? No, this movie actually takes place in a city. If only the location of an Evil Dead movie really mattered. I saw some people that really hated the location of this movie and gave it lower ratings, which didn't make sense because this felt pretty fresh. The way they used this apartment building felt so fresh and fun. I liked it. Nevertheless, we meet our main character, Beth. Now, Beth is a bit estranged from her family. It seems like she hasn't talked to her sister or her kids or husband in quite a while. Not Beth's husband, but her sister's husband. We see her taking a pregnancy test, which turns out to be positive while she's at this rock show. She does sound or something for rock bands. I don't really know. Realizing she's pregnant, wants to change her life up and is like, hey, what better way to do that than to go to my sister who's had kids before and fix my life? We're then introduced to her family. This family consists of Ellie, the matriarch, Danny, the only son, Bridget, the older sister, and lastly, Cassie, the little sister. Here is where we also get a very awkward interaction between them when Beth is handing out gifts and she goes to hand out a gift to the husband who left them months ago for really no reason, but there's no dad in the picture now. After this weird interaction, Ellie sends the kids off to go get pizza while Beth and her talk. When the kids get back is where the story truly begins because there's a giant earthquake that happens. The boy Danny notices that the floor or ground of this parking garage has opened up into a bank vault. As it turns out, this apartment building was built on top of an old bank building. He goes down to investigate. Down there, he manages to find a creepy old set of records. Also, in this old almost catacombs, he finds a creepy book. After finding the book, the kids all head upstairs, and the mother and Beth are more than happy to see them because they're like, oh, where the did they go? We can't get them by phone because the phone lines are all down. When they get inside, Bridget and Danny are able to go inside and listen to the records. They listen to the first record where they talk about, oh, this book is an evil old book. Deciding to open it, Danny accidentally cuts himself on the book's teeth that are holding it shut, and it opens due to the blood sacrifice. During the book opening, we hear the second record play, and we hear a priest over that talking about how this book is the Book of the Dead. He wants to translate it and experiment with whatever it is. We hear some Latin or whatever this is written in while the book flings open. Then the record cuts off. We look over at the mom, who's in the elevator going to take laundry down, when we see this demon or whatever it is fly through up into the elevator and hit her. So due to Danny and Bridget's little book experiment, the mother is possessed by a demon, and she's attacked very brutally inside this elevator, after which she gets out and walks into the house. You can obviously tell that the mother is infected with something. She's acting very strange.
I had the most beautiful dream. We were together sitting in a tall forest. It was the perfect day, and all I could think about was how much I wanted to cut you all open and climb inside your body so that we could stay one happy family.
I have to just give this woman credit for the way she's able to act this movie out. The faces and movements, she has to be a contortionist, and she's such a good actress for the way she's able to portray this evil entity throughout this film. It's so awesome. It's after this strange moment when Ellie, the mom, has acted this way while frying eggs that have blood in them for whatever reason. The family's like, what the happened to you? She goes up to them and starts saying crazy shit, and then projectile vomits for like 20 straight seconds. The family, realizing that something is terribly wrong with the mother, tries to go downstairs to take her to the hospital. When they realize the elevator's broken, when going to the stairwell, they realize the stairs are gone from the earthquake. So the power's out. They don't have access to their phones, and there's no way down in the building, meaning they're stuck in a situation with a dead mom. She's dead, by the way, and they have to just wait out and survive inside this building until things come back to normal. Knowing this, they head back to their apartment, where they lay Ellie in her bed. During this time, the neighbors come over and start doing like prayers for her. They leave, and Beth is left inside this room with the mom, and we get one of the creepiest, most unsettling moments in the entire movie. At first, they think the mom's dead. Beth is just sitting in there, exclaiming all of the sadness that she has, like, oh wow, I wish I could have said goodbye to you. There's so many things I didn't do for you. Wow, 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 wowee. With the fly flying over the mom's eye, all of a sudden, the mom is moving and alive. She then calls in the family and screams. The family comes in. They feel her burning up. She's really hot due to the demon inside her, and they throw her in the bathtub, trying to cool her down. This doesn't really work, though, because we get probably the best scene in the movie. I know I just talked that other scene up to how creepy it was, but this is downright disturbing.
She's burning up.
Mommy's with the maggots now.
It's after this bathroom scene where the mom chases down the family talking weird that they realize something is horribly wrong. The mother ends up attacking Beth. During this, the oldest daughter, she's probably the oldest of the family, is like, hey, quit attacking her, attack me, or whatever. The demon mom attacks her with this tattoo gun. The mom hears the neighbors who hear the screaming from down the hallway. They come in. Then she goes full demon mode. She ends up attacking the neighbors, eating one of their eyeballs outside when the family closes her out, and then spitting that eyeball into one of the little kids that's the neighbor's throat, causing him to choke to death and die. We then see the family lock the doors, obviously. They're like, F this, get out of here. And she ends up killing all the neighbors. This one guy has a shotgun. He tries to blast her, but she just ends up killing him. All of this is happening through a peephole, which just adds to the horror, knowing they're stuck on the other side of this. We then see Ellie being rather manipulative, and it's pretty scary seeing her demonic face on the other side.
Nothing a big ol' hug and kiss from you won't fix.
He somehow knows what's going on the other side of the door, too. It's really creepy throughout this. It's very scary. Of course, the family ends up having a breakdown. Danny and Bridget are like, oh my god, Danny had this book and this record player, and that happened. So Danny takes Beth to his room, because he's a little DJ with his records, and shows her that. During this time, two important things happen. For one, we have Bridget, who's being infected with this demon. Then we see the little girl, Cassie. Now, Cassie is being manipulated by the demon mom during this time, unsupervised, doing her thing, and Cassie tries to let the mom in. They hear screaming from outside the door, run out, and they save Cassie from being grabbed by the mom. Lock her out again, and Cassie's fine. They go into the kitchen and see Bridget. Bridget is eating a wine glass. The way the glass is just poking out her, it's super up. Or maybe it's Danny. Danny finds this. Danny tries to fight Bridget back, ends up burning Bridget, runs off to the bedroom. Danny and Cassie end up fighting Bridget off. Cassie has this little toy that was broken in the beginning of the film, stabs Bridget in the throat, kills her. They cover her up and tape her to the bed. Now Beth is like, hey, I need to listen to this last record tape to know what's going on. Ellie's able to crawl through the vents. Ellie gets into the house while she's listening to this tape so she can't hear her.
I can hear them outside the doors now, begging for me. You must run. All you can do is run. This horror will not stop.
Bridget ends up coming out while over this cover it looks like a floating ghost like Casper. It's silly. Danny ends up getting up. Cassie and Beth have this big fight with Ellie. Cassie ends up passing a pair of scissors to Ellie, or to Beth. Beth ends up stabbing Ellie, the mom, in the throat, giving them enough time to get out of the apartment building. They find the shotgun and know that there's a fire escape in only one of the apartments. Beth tries to break through. Of course, it doesn't work. Ellie comes out. Then Beth shoots her with a shotgun twice, tearing two of her limbs off, which I definitely cannot show on YouTube. Here, now that Ellie is completely delimified, she doesn't have arms or legs, the other occupants of the building, including Danny, Bridget, the neighbors, they're all turning into demons. And they're telling her, you're gonna die before the night ends. Beth and Cassie go into the elevator, and the elevator obviously doesn't work from the attack earlier. The doors end up closing, blood fills into the elevator, and they fall down, hitting the bottom of the floor like 13 floors down. We get a The Shining-esque moment where blood shoots out of the elevator. Beth and Cassie somehow survive. It's a very silly moment that I don't think can show because it's super bloody. They're covered in blood. They go into the parking garage and get into the car, try to drive off. Of course, it's stuck on the concrete that's split by the earthquake. They get out of the car, and this weird demon comes out that's a collection of all the bodies from upstairs together, morphed into one. They end up capturing Cassie. Beth has to fight back for her. There's a wood chipper in this place for some reason, and a chainsaw. Beth grabs the chainsaw, ends up chainsawing this demon in half. Cassie turns the wood chipper on. This demon and all of its parts with the chainsaw go into the wood chipper, split apart. They drive off. Everything's fine. It is the most brutal, bloody, silliest moment. This whole ending is so laughably funny and so entertaining. I love it. Now that they've ended up making it out, what happens? I know I've just skipped past this whole movie. It's so ridiculous and silly. I just don't want to make this video too long. The neighbor comes down and gets in her car talking to her friend. This is the person we saw at the beginning of the film, and she gets infected by the demon, and the ending happens. I'll just show you. Evil Dead Rise. Not only is it my favorite horror film of the year, but it's also one of the top movies of the entire year for me. I didn't want to spoil everything or talk about everything because it's so bloody and so gory and so over the top and ridiculous. It's so funny and so ridiculous is the best way to describe this film. Like when you have the Shining elevator moment when it drops and all the blood shoots out of the elevator, or the chainsaw moment where she's chainsawing this homunculus of demon parts and pushing them into the wood chipper, and then the wood chipper ends up grinding all this apart and shooting blood out. It's just such a crazy, over-the-top moment. This movie checks every box for a horror film for me. I know it's not everyone's kind of horror film, because you add that comedy, but it ticked it all for me. I'd have to give this movie like an 8.5 out of 10 or a 9. I think 8.5 is probably more fair. I really enjoyed this movie, and I liked it just as much on a second viewing. This is one of the few movies, maybe the last movie too, that deserves a slot on the top 5 horror films of this year for me. This is an excellent film. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But this is my top horror movie of 2023. This is the only movie on this list that I'm going to remember for years to come and tell people to watch. I have Megan at number 5. It's an okay film about an AI robot doll. Stupid. The next film after that, I have Knock at the Cabin. It's an okay horror thriller that kind of proves promise from M. Night Shyamalan after the past several years of bad horror movies, like that one where there was these people at the beach that got old. I think it was just called Old. Or that dumb movie where that guy was keeping people in his basement. What was that called? It was stupid. It was bad. After that, we have Talk to Me, who was the biggest disappointment for me of this year. It was an okay horror film that had way too many problems, but I am very excited for the directors that made that movie. The next film was a completely unexpected movie that I watched for the first time for this video called When Evil Lurks, a possession film that takes possession horror to a whole different level. That movie was very original and very fresh for me, and I do think I will mention that. I didn't give it enough credit in this video. It's a very interesting, one-of-a-kind movie that I really like. Then our last film at number 1, Evil Dead Rise. It is a fantastic, funny, scary film. I don't know if it is, in fact, a better film than the 2013 rehash. 10 years later, 2023 to 2013, this movie lived up to everything I wanted and more. Yeah, great film. Thinking back to talking about these movies, when I first had this idea, I probably should have made this list more personal, but I didn't want to open it up to the hate that would come from me sharing my personal 5 favorite movies of this year. So I went ahead and conglomerated a list that would put together 5 films that critics and audiences love. I didn't like 3 of them as much. That's the list. So let's hope that 2024 is a much better year for horror. I'm glad I did this because I know there's several movies I need to watch that came out this year that I didn't watch. So maybe we'll make this a yearly thing on my channel. And next year I'll do a list that's much more my top 5 favorite horror films. Or maybe I'll just put together a list like this again. Let me know down below. If there are any movies that you watched this year that I didn't mention, comment them down below. I'd love to hear what you guys liked in case I haven't seen them. If you enjoyed the video, drop me a like and subscribe to the channel. That would be very helpful. We're getting really close to 1,000 subscribers. I'll see you guys next time. I don't know what video I'm going to be making next time. Probably some movie or TV show. Until then, I'll see you later.